How are you? Welcome to Telesur's Critical Move. A controversial civil engineering project divides opinions in Turkey. The Istanbul Canal, very close to the notorious, for strategic reasons, Bosphorus Strait. Who opposes this work undertaken by President Erdogan's government? What is the importance of building another canal for the naval transit between the Black and Marmara Seas? What implication would it have for geopolitics and, above all, for regional economics? Let's display the board. We're making the first move. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has referred to this mega project as follows. This is the largest project in the history of Turkey, and it is strategically important for the country. We are ready for its implementation. The urban plan is already approved. As soon as the legal deadline is completed, we will open the bidding phase and the excavators will begin to work this same year. But what if we listen to some citizens' opinions regarding the construction of this disputed canal? There should be a referendum. Erdogan says that all times he should consult the people. Then why don't he ask the people about this? Erdogan must address this problem with these people. We cannot decide on his own. We cannot decide by himself on behalf of the country. This land belongs to all of us. First, this project is unnecessary. In addition to the extensive damage to nature, it would cause an economic crisis and a profit-oriented economy. All these reasons pointed out by Mayor Imamoglu are correct. We already have a canal. I do not think we need a second one. I am a citizen who cares about the environment. Of course, there will be demolitions, but the state will not throw our interests into the garbage. We will be paid for what we deserve, and we will be able to build elsewhere. This is how it works. After the third airport, the Istanbul Canal project will revitalize the local economy. The price of land will be reevaluated. No animals or pasture will remain if the canal crosses there. This will leave us in a difficult situation. This project will have an impact on everything: agricultural areas, ecological corridors, natural habitats, or rural activities, even sources of water. That is why we oppose it, and they should take our views into account. It is not enough that we call them traitors and ignore them. You can see how we have different opinions. Let us review some websites that also talk about this issue. This Deutsche Welle, that last 1st January, published an article, Istanbul Canal, Erdogan's dream, Istanbul's nightmare. The Turkish government is planning nothing short of the creation of the second Bosphorus, a copy of the strait that meanders through the middle of the 16 million metropolis, Istanbul. To the west of the city, the artificial 45-kilometer canal is to be built parallel to the Bosphorus, linking the Black Sea with the Sea of Marmara. According to the government sources, the intention is to relieve the heavy shipping traffic on the Bosphorus and to avoid accidents. Planning for the project began as early as 2011, then stagnated for years. But now the Turkish government has brought the plans to life again. And it continues saying, the realization of Erdogan's latest mega construction project is being hampered by a shift in the balance of power in the Bosphorus metropolis in June. Since then, Social Democrat Ekrem İmamoğlu of CHP has been mayor, marking the first time in 25 years that Istanbul's mayor is not part of Erdogan's AKP party. That's important information, huh? And the city's newest leader has made his opposition to the planned construction known. Imamoglu calls the project, he's mayor of Istanbul, and two, he opposes the government of President Erdogan. Imamoglu calls the project a betrayal of Istanbul and a murder project, and vows that 16 million people will resist. The project would have a significant impact on the region's nature, says environmental expert Doganay Tolunay of Istanbul University. I'm sorry for the pronunciation of these Turkish words. but this is the language spoken in Turkey. The canal will consume important water resources because Istanbul's water reserves will be stored where it is planned to run. And then open quotation. The dune landscapes in the north of the city are home to protected forests, streams, and pastures that are important for the ecosystem and are home to hundreds of species of plants and animals, warns Tolunay. Fishermen in the Black Sea and farmers would have to leave the region, he said. In another part of this article, which is also interesting because it is called Mega Project with Mega Costs. Added to this are the enormous construction expenses, officially the equivalent of 11.5 billion euros and $2.9 billion. But experts expect the cost for the new canal to be much higher. The project lacks any economic rationality, says economist Mustafa Samnes, adding that the Bosphorus already guarantees good conditions for shipping and allows sufficient passage. Another item entitled Earthquake Risk. Critics warn that the canal could have a negative impact on the tectonic fault lines that are deep beneath Istanbul's soil, such as increasing the risk of earthquakes. The Agency for Disaster and Emergency Management, however, disagrees, saying that there is no connection between earthquake risks and the construction of the canal. But the statement has done little to convince many city dwellers. The mayor of Istanbul also criticizes the fact that plots of land along the canal have already been sold to Arab investors, including members of the royal families. Erdogan's response: he wonders, is that forbidden? If it were Hans and George, nobody would have a problem with it. And then he is making reference to European interference in Turkey. The canal is being built. Leaders with the Erdogan's AKP party repeatedly point out that the construction project is not in the remit of Mayor Imamoglu or nor Istanbul city administration, insisting that the Istanbul Canal is a national project, not a local one. There's another source that we consulted, Grant George. 10th January last, he wrote an article, What is the Canal Istanbul project in Turkey? I'm going to cite some paragraph. What is that project necessary? According to 2017 figures, economic losses arising from the waiting periods tankers face reached millions of dollars. A daily rental loss of tankers over 200 meters in length reaches 120,000 on average. Under favorable conditions, a ship of a length of 200 meters passes through the Bosphorus Strait in about 1.5 hours, said Murat Kurum, Minister of Environment and Urbanization of Turkey. The government has said that the canal will be 30 miles long and 80 feet or 25 meters deep, and at some points up to 1 kilometer wide. It will start at Lake, it's a practically unpronounceable word, Kushukemesik, a naturally formed lagoon on the Marmara Sea coast west of Istanbul, go through north the Salisdil Dam and the Samsla village, and connect to the Black Sea to the north. Soil excavated to form the canal will be used to build 3 artificial islands in the Marmara Sea. When completed, the canal will turn the densest part of the city, including its historic center, into an island. The area also straddles one of the world's most active fault lines. And there comes the concern that this could cause earthquakes. Another question in this article, what are the associated environmental concerns? It is stated that the seaway will damage underground water resources of Istanbul and will threaten the Marmara Sea along with other social and urbanization risks that have been raised. Today, around 40% of Istanbul's water comes from the European side of the city, which even, according to government's environmental assessment, will be severely impacted by the canal and the airport. Now, to understand the geostrategic implications of the ambitious engineering project called Canal Istanbul, we need to know where the location of the no less important Bosphorus Strait. The Bosphorus Strait, a geostrategic zone. Located in Turkey, the Bosphorus Strait divides the city of Istanbul in two parts. In this way, one area of the same country is left on the European subcontinent and the other on the Asian subcontinent. The Bosphorus, with a length of 30 kilometers and a maximum width of 3,700 meters, connects the Sea of Marmara with the Black Sea. Therefore, it constitutes a fundamental gateway to access Russia. According to American historian John Freely, the Bosphorus is a strait that taps all over the straits because with a key it opens and closes two worlds, two seas. These and other reasons have turned it into an important geostrategic area, the reason for discussions and wars since ancient civilizations. Greeks, Ottomans, and Russians have intended to close the strait and use it for their exclusive transit. It is also a fundamental area for oil transport. Since 1936, control of the strait was assigned to Turkey during the so-called Montreux Convention. However, the amendments made at that meeting ensure free trade and passage to vessels from all countries. To relieve traffic, two hanging bridges and a railway tunnel were built in Istanbul. Transit through the Bosphorus is dangerous and heavy, as it has 7 narrow curves with a little more than double the width of the vessels, in addition to its unstable currents. Next to the Dardanelles, the Bosphorus is an obligated passage for all the maritime routes of those countries on the shores of the Black Sea. Any tension in this geographical bottleneck could tumble regional economy, oil prices, and security, both in Europe and in Asia. It is for this reason that this area's political and financial capital is carefully observed by the international community and especially by Turkey. There you go. We are geographically and spatially located, and through our strategic move, we're going to see on the screen. That way you can join our participation. What impact would the controversial canal have to join the Bosphorus in the regional geopolitics? Will Erdogan be able to conclude the project despite the strong opposition? So, yes, you have Turkey in the world, in the region, and in the map, we see what is the Bosphorus Strait with the character section we just made, and farther to the left, with the dotted line, is the project of the new canal, Istanbul Canal, with unpronounceable names, because we can't pronounce it. We have to learn Turkish, right? We're going to a break, and we'll come back later.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en ahí.
Dot in the eye. Saturdays. Only on Telesur.
Still valid to date, the Montreux Convention is an international agreement signed in the 30s of the last century. Let us know more about this covenant. In July 1936, the Montreux Convention was established with the purpose of regulating the passage of ships through the Turkish Straits of Bosphorus and Dardanelles. Australia, Bulgaria, and Germany, France, Greece, Japan, Romania, the then Soviet Union, United Kingdom, and the former Yugoslavia participated in the negotiations and agreed to Turkey's request at that time. Pursuant to the convention, warships from non-Black Sea countries may only remain for 21 days. In addition, it specifies that warships of non-Black Sea countries in no way can exceed a tonnage of 15 tons, while the total number of vessels in that area is limited to 9. In addition to its main provisions, transit through the Turkish Strait are notified to Ankara through diplomatic channels before the expected passage. The Montreux Convention remains in force. Amendments have been incorporated into it that have regenerated tensions in the region. For example, by 1992, an amendment was included allowing Turkey to close the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Straits both in peace and wartime. Over the last decades, safety for vessels that would use the Turkish Strait has been a key issue due to the increase in world maritime traffic. The government of Ankara approved in 1994 maritime traffic regulation for the Turkish Straits and the Marmara region, with the aim of ensuring safety of navigation and people and property. It also included protection of the environment in that area. Let's start then with our analysis in our critical move from Istanbul, Turkey, where we're joined by Iñaki Gil Campo, Master in International Security from the Ankara Police Academy and in International Relations from the UNAM. Welcome to our program, Daniel. I'm glad for your contact because you are a connoisseur of geopolitics of Turkey. We want to scrutinize some aspects linked regarding that country whose intricacies are unknown to the international community. First question, why has this ambitious project, generated so much opposition? And what is the situation internationally beyond Istanbul? Thank you so much, Ray. Good afternoon. Pleasure to be with you and the viewers. First, I would like to start with a quote by Napoleon. It says, if Istanbul would be the capital. And that quote leaves clear the importance of the geographic position of Turkey. Specifically, the Istanbul Canal, this new canal, is already a fact. A few weeks ago, just at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the strong rejection by scientists and politicians and experts, and the new Istanbul mayor, President Erdogan, signed a project starting the construction of this new seaway. The aspects against this new canal are focused mainly on the issue of water. Istanbul is one of the cities which have been described among the 10 cities that in the next 10 years will be left without water. So this crisis for this vital resource is the critical point that leads to crisis in the country. Number two, and perhaps the structure of construction in Istanbul, since they are old, they have a great risk for the construction of this canal. Thank you, Daniel. Stay with us. We're going to bring Iñaki Gil de San Vicente. He's accompanying us from San Vicente. He's a Basque intellectual, and he's a usual companion in Critical. Give us a more updated view. To what extent is this implication of the canal for the dwellers of Istanbul in terms of the national situation and in Turkish politics? Good afternoon. Before everything, in fact, we are just seeing a megalomaniac project which is included within the Erdogan's strategy to turn back to the Ottoman Empire under the current conditions. The project of this second canal has been already raised in 2011 already. But also all the projects were raised, two other bridges on the Bosphorus Strait, and two other bridges that would make quicker the traffic. And apparently this is part of a project, a reasonable project, because if we include three basic questions: one, the environmental impact; second, let's say, the economic impact of Turkey, which is pretty economically weakened; and third, especially and mainly, the geostrategic impact in terms of the fight from 2015, 2014 to today. These projects which I mentioned, the second canal and the bridges and others who are in the pipeline, correspond to before the increased tensions between the US and China because of the Silk Route. These projects, even before Erdogan was president, they have been talking about this project and member of parliament. So this is a project which is facing difficulties before entering the substance, which is an economic and geostrategic problem. We have to see whether, if today, under the present economic conditions and in the present world conditions, economic conditions, for instance, the French economy has sunk 6%, the Italian economy is, and the American economy are in recession. The Japanese economy is languishing. China's growth is estimated in 2021 of 4%, and there's a world debt that no one knows how will be paid. And in this context, I don't know how this gigantic work will come to end. But from 2011, the Turkish government has been saturating the present canal, so most likely we will have a decline of goods circulation worldwide. So for this reason, because there will be a lot of tensions, as I explained, and because in fact it has declined the vessel traffic around the world, there's no sense to make this gigantic work. So, and this could be even delayed. But I will end with this. First, we have to wait until the world economy restarts, and Turkey will have to understand that this project, because this is one of the few guarantees that it has to resist a Euro-Asian project of the Silk Road, and to have a small dependency as regional power. They are getting their own road, and I consolidate myself as the key between Europe and Asia. As he was speaking, we were watching some links of meetings by President Erdogan with Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO representative, one organization to which Turkey belongs to, which is not a minor detail, and also meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Further on, I want to speak to you about this, but then let me go back to Daniel, a master in international security, but also living in Turkey, in Istanbul, Turkey, and he was saying there are questions about the international community, especially in the West, in terms of the reality in Turkey. And speaking of opposition to this project, then there comes the name of the Istanbul mayor, who we do know. Give us a small profile of this person, and also tell us when he is quoting President Erdogan when President Erdogan says George and Hans. Who are these characters? Because that gives us an idea of he's speaking about something about beyond the borders of Turkey. Exactly, you're right. There are many forces in opposition of this project, as you said, which is a megalomaniac project. But beyond that, this is a plan that has been toying around with from 2012, and its purpose, special purpose, is 2023, which is a critical year, a symbolic year, because this is the 100th anniversary of the Turkish Republic, and the third canal is the third and last mega project, which is going to be completed in the city to celebrate that occasion. So to undertake this project, they will usher in a new era for the country, and this new era is going to create different points, in particular development and growth, to position Turkey among the 10 top world economies with a GDP of $3 trillion. So these two forces, competing forces, are then created. So these two forces, competing forces, are then creating. However, the canal is a fact. President Erdogan already signed the start of this project, the start of this new era, and on the opposition side, inside Turkey, we can see that the Istanbul mayor also belong to a group that has been in opposition of these policies and ideas by the ruling party for the last 10 years. So when he won elections in Istanbul, he became a leading character, and he was the public face of the opposition to this canal, and not only that canal, but some other projects and public policies that were being raised in Turkey. So we can see that this contention did not serve inside Turkey, but outside their borders. Possibly it could be some kind of negotiation that could lead to further tension, to stop this process. But I see that I don't see it very clear, and this is unfortunate. Thank you, Daniel. Iñaki, just to close this first part of the analysis, you were mentioning two facts that are not minor, and these are the ever-increasing relations between Erdogan's government and President Vladimir Putin on the one hand, and on the other, the fact that Turkey continues to be a member of NATO. I wonder, in the midst of this context of the wish of the Turkish government to materialize this mega project, how do you fare with two enemy entities, NATO on the one side and on the other Russia, but both are, one way or the other, strategic allies of Turkey in its critical position, in its pivot position, not only in terms of physical geography, but also in terms of politics? Well, I think that we are living a moment after the economic crisis we're living. We're living a moment in which uncertainty has multiplied exponentially. Therefore, any project that were being assessed prior to the summer or fall of 2019 are in a situation of careful study. So they could undergo possible changes, and in waiting for a better situation, and that are different from the current situation. And the panorama we live in now, since late 2019 and early 2020, we have to see small lights at the end of the tunnel in order in terms of the power relations in the present situation. But I think now all the major powers, and let's say the sub-imperialist powers, are waiting to see whether in 5 or 6 months' time they can make changes. Will try to recover their economies and try to establish a minimum situation of order in order to be in a position to plan their strategies. And I insist right now in this situation of uncertainty, in which the figures are really alarming. Looking at the latest report of the European Union, we can say 250 million poor workers will lose their jobs. And if that is the case, it would be a catastrophe. In this context, the Turkish situation is extremely tenuous in both aspects, in both ends. For one hand, on the one hand, it's a strategic allies multiply, and that could be its a strategic value multiplies, and we can see that in the different negotiations, and in the 60s, in the 80s, in the 90s, there's always been increasing tension, and always Turkey has been in the center, on the side of the United States on the one hand, but on the other hand, if there's really an aggravation of the world situation, and Turkey will lack the money to undertake that project. So these are the two ends that are going to become worse, and it will become aggravated by the tensions, and as a consequence of the people who are already in opposition of this project because of these repercussions, and all the peoples around the Black Sea, not only the salinization of the Black Sea, and there's the withdrawal of the sea level starts to low by 10 centimeters. This will be speaking about another context, because and it will affect the Turkish geopolitical interests in a critical manner, and they will have to control a part of the Syrian territory. And this is when the position, where the Turkish position, and that is a bit hastened. But the information we have in our hands is hard to say which way they're going to move. What we can say is that the situation in Turkey is going to have a greater geostrategic weight, and Ankara, in order to close the Bosphorus Strait. Those who have been in Istanbul, we know how that strait could be closed. The first thing the Turkish did a little before Istanbul was to create two Turkeys, with which 2 or 3 years before Istanbul fell, they sank the first ship, and they hanged and killed the 30 crew members, showing how they could control the Bosphorus Strait, and they can do that again with the help of NATO in an extreme situation. If the uncertainty that we're living in now lead us to a worse scenario. So in our analysis, here on, we have to see 1 or 2 years down the line and see how the capitalist system and the world economy, in the midst of this situation, we're going to see changes, and I insist that they are going to strengthen. In the case of Turkey, these changes are going to strengthen its domestic condition and the Erdogan sectors and the internal conditions, but at the same time they will strengthen the support of NATO and of far-right European sectors in order to have in Turkey a source of control of the conflicts that could originate in Asia and China, and all of the control of the oil by Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iraq, and Iran, etc., etc. We're going to see how we don't have those reference points have been left behind vis-a-vis the situation today. We have to take into account now that Turkey, which is we have to take into account Turkey's behavior, and that's the only case that is to guarantee, to ensure its political military might based on economic growth. So it is that that we can insinuate some lines, but from here to 2 and 1.5 years, and this is with some luck. Thank you, Iñaki. You left open the door for the analysis, geopolitical analysis, and in-depth analysis we're going to have in a few minutes. I invite you to stay with us. I'm going to say goodbye to Daniel. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your clarifications around the Turkish reality. I reiterate, unknown by the Western civilization. Thank you both. Let's go to a break. Consider the east gateway between Europe and Asia. Turkey is today a relevant player in the global geostrategic panorama. Let's see. The Republic of Turkey is a key political and economic player in the whole region of Central Asia, Europe, Middle East, and the Mediterranean. Its geographic position, surrounded by numerous ports on its coast, are core points of commerce in the region. With access to the Marmara Sea, the Bosphorus, and the Black Sea, it becomes a key piece to bring European products to the east. Some of these ports also function as exit points for thousands of oil barrels arriving from the Near East or the Caucasus through the pipelines in east of the country. With a surface of 785,350 square kilometers and a population around 81 million people, Turkey ranks 18th worldwide for its gross domestic product, which according to official figures is over $900,000. The country has a remarkable geostrategic importance that allows it to address the crisis developing in the Mediterranean Levant, the Persian Gulf, and Central Asia through the use of its military capabilities. The Turkish incursion in Syria and the U.S. withdrawal have had a huge impact, both for the Arab country and for the region in general, according to analysts. For more than 6 decades, Turkey has been a NATO member, a condition that makes it an important ally and at the same time adversary of many international key players such as Russia on the one hand and the United States on the other. In its relations with the European Union, the increasing flow of migrants and refugees heading to the subcontinent has become a key point in the negotiation strategy, qualified by cycles of tension. In 2016, an agreement was signed whereby Ankara would stop the arrival of refugees in Europe, but the agreement was not fulfilled. That same year, President Erdogan denounced an attempted coup d'etat which caused a downturn in its relations with former allies like the United States. Gradually, the Turkish government has strengthened ties with countries not aligned to Western positions, as is the case of Russia and Venezuela. Turkey reinforced its link with Moscow after the opening of the first section of the Turk Stream gas pipeline, quite with Caracas, it has signed important agreements in trade and air transport. And how Turkey acts on the geopolitical board, I'm going to speak about Francisco Coluana, sociologist and former UN official. Francisco, welcome to our critical play. How are you? How are you, Ray? Thank you so much. I'm also accompanied by Iñaki Gil de San Vicente. Remember, I asked him to stay longer with us in this critical move. But Iñaki, if you allow me, let me ask Francisco, how do you view, who are a connoisseur of the international relations, what the position, Turkey's position, not only in the region, but also beyond its borders? Good afternoon, viewers of Telesur. It's very complex because the strategic military design of Turkey in the times of the Cold War was a land-based platform to attack the Soviet Union. That was the position of Turkey in NATO, and that has always been that way by the Western powers. Anyways, Turkey always had a complex situation in terms of its geopolitical role at the global stage, because geographically it's a landlocked country. It's a surrounded country, even though it had access to other ways. It has a very uncomfortable, let's say, geography. It's an open geography. So it's a country, to a large extent, confined, surrounded by Arab countries, and it also has the weight up north, which is what comes from the Western Europe. So having said that, today Turkey is attempting to find some sort of independence, and it aspires to be part of the European Union, but it was truncated, and it faced rejection from several European countries to accept Turkey into the European Union. And by the way, the European Union is in conflict, is undergoing a crisis. We have seen it with the coronavirus, with COVID-19. The European Union has problems regarding its concept of unity. And the rest of the geopolitical situation of Turkey is also not comfortable, because it's not a widely popular country in Arab countries because of the influence of the Ottoman Empire. So they are facing a very complex situation. And what is the strategic move so that Turkey somehow seeks its autonomy from the United States and from the factic powers of the European Union, to function that to the benefit of Turkey as a key player to maintain balance in the geopolitical negotiations? With the COVID experience, the situation is going to change. I wouldn't say radically, but it's going to change in the sense of reconfiguring and reaccommodation or international accommodation, because the European community is going to be a social after the departure of UK, because of Brexit. It's going to be a key power player, but as long as the European Union remains politically united rather than economic, because the economic union is you're going to see year by year, but the political unity has to do with the strategic security objective of Europe. Russia is another key player. We can't forget that. It seeks a different identity, trying to approach in the midst of COVID to the community of European community in order to become a more important player, because this is an important player, and in order to allay uh, uh, lack of confidence or mistrust. And the issue of the United States, a country that needs to recover its hegemonic position, and there's a lot of uncertainty vis-a-vis Turkey. What is the real foreign policy of the United States beyond trying to recover its position as hegemon? We have to find out who made the virus, who originated, and why he did it. And on the issue of having a strait, is reflecting an ancient need to have a more agile, more relaxed and open relation with the rest of the world, because it is a confined country from the geographical point of view. Francisco, thinking, reflecting on all of this you've said, I also remember Iñaki reminded me something I was putting on the geopolitical board, and the analysis have to be done not on the basis of what happened a few years ago, but taking into account the current reality, and in particular Turkey. Iñaki on this, and taking into account this context by Francisco, super necessary context by Francisco, who are today the key players, or let me put it the other way, the players for which Turkey is an uncomfortable piece in the Euro-Asian chess game, and that could boycott this project of President Erdogan. Well, let me first say that I can hear you very well. I could barely hear your question. I could barely hear the words. So I'm going to limit myself to continue elaborating further on what I said before. I think I understood who will be the powers interested in controlling, having special relation with Turkey, and what alliances and in what international forces in this point would they be located, taking into account the social political panorama. So I think Turkey has no other choice but to come close and have some sort of, even though they have some sort of propagandistic autonomy, and continue to exploit Syrian oil, and the coalition that have originated in social sectors, and they can transfer Syrian population to conquer Syria and to finish with the Kurdish problem. But looking at the Turkish army depends structurally on NATO. We could see of the missile system, or the S-400 Russian missile system, but in the Turkish military structure, you can see that in the tanks, for instance, the Leopard tanks and the American tanks and some tanks that they still have from the UK, the Abrahams, the American Abrahams tank. These are conditioned, and the aviation and all the technological structure, the support structure, are subordinated to the networks. Turkey is an ally of NATO, is a member of NATO at this point. They rely heavily on the NATO technologies, and they could not recover
de especialistas rusos, entre otras cuestiones, por el problema de la lengua, por el problema de la escritura,
and then you have
por muchos más problemas. Y también, aparte de todo esto,
they could see, in addition to this
plantearía.
chronic reliance on NATO,
dentro de una oficialidad formada y estructurada en base a una obediencia ciega.
they have also a set of officers.
Que ya son de suyo de peso, Turquía sabe que
Turkey knows that they rely on this relationship with NATO, not only in terms of the economy, but also in terms of the military aspects. And that relationship makes it that Turkey,
puede hablar, como ya ha hablado en el caso del segundo estrecho del Bósforo, ya ha hablado con Corea del Sur,
makes Turkey to speak about the second Bosphorus Strait, and
que estaría ilusionada a participar.
they have been the illusion in participating in this project.
A mantener un poquito en el año 2019, incluso en un evento oficial, ¿no? Pero para obtener capital financiero transnacional, o bien lo obtiene por parte de China, que está un poco apretada en la situación presente, o lo obtiene de la Gran Banca Internacional, ¿no? Y la Gran Banca Internacional no está en estos momentos y va a estar lo menos para regalar dinero sin tener unas garantías muy sólidas de cómo cobrarlo, ¿no? Lo que está pasando en Europa, por ejemplo,
What's happening in Europe, for example, in terms of Italy and all the powers, including some issues with France and Northern Europe, Germany, Austria, Finland, etc., with the issue of the coronavirus and the issue of the UK leaving the European Union, it shows the difficulties that Turkey will face to find the amount of money it would require to make this project. It would require between in the area of $20 billion to in a corrupt state like the Turkish state. It would be included in the official budget. Even the prices would shoot off by 50%. And taking into account this panorama, they have no other choice but to try to maintain its position of sub-imperialist power and to maintain its reliance to NATO and other international alliances with imperialist nations, which are trying to make profit and are going to face the crisis that we're facing in mankind. And the sectors of the Turkish bourgeoisie are aware of this situation. I hope that I responded to your question, that I could barely hear, and I couldn't hear the comments by the person preceding me. Tonalo is not accompanying us today, but thank you for your reply. And just to conclude with Francisco, we just have a minute of a program, but I cannot waste this opportunity to ask you. This Erdogan's Turkey had hands tied vis-a-vis this project, which will have a regional and world global impact. Yeah, they have his hands tied. On the one hand, by the United States, because this executive regulates the use of the straits, which is a multilateral aspect, and they cannot alter, even though it's in Turkish sovereignty, they cannot open a strait, a canal, because it has military implication. Because these are multilateral agreements, not even bilateral, but specifically the United Nations regarding the law of the sea. But this proposal, its Turkish proposal, has been supported by the Montreux Convention. So this is out of the specific framework of the Convention of the Law of the Sea of the United Nations, or because it's a multilateral organization, and they will have to discuss and negotiate. And regarding what my colleague said, I tend to agree in general terms with what he said, and the reality will say. And Turkey has been aligned to the Western powers in order to attack the Soviet Union. That was the role of Turkey. And now Turkey wants to be more independent. In fact, they supported one of the regional powers that supported President Maduro. This is very important. It's gained some autonomy. And sometimes we cannot understand, not because we don't understand local political problems and the internal political disputes, but each statesman has the responsibility of looking out for their own people and to interact in the new scenarios emerging in the world. So the question is whether he has his hand tied or conditioned. Yes, he is very much conditioned, but a country like Turkey, which is a critical point, which is critical in terms of peace efforts in that region, then we'll see. We'll see. In particular, because of the coronavirus. Because coronavirus is an ethical, moral issue. And that has been my emphatic point, and I take advantage of this to just say it again. It had ethical challenges because this criminal logic, as have been said, well, very well, Francisco. Thank you for your participation, and I thank you for Iñaki Hills and Vicente for staying with us until the end. We're going to our conclusions. Together, the mega hanging bridge, the new airport, the Istanbul Canal is becoming the drop that overflowed the cup of those who are domestically opposing President Erdogan's ideas to make Turkey, according to himself, a regional reference. As it happens, this particular work would not only have an impact for Ankara, but would change the regional economy. Therefore, the next question would be, could it be that the opposition to the project is not only domestic? Who would oppose to the consolidation of Turkey as the necessary key between Europe and Asia? It'd be well worthwhile following the track. For today, we're closing your geopolitical board.